Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's webinar on behalf of Barking and Dagenham Faith Forum. To mark the National Mental Health Week, we have one of our first webinars on mental health. I welcome Talat Bhatti from Mind and Cliff Schaefer from Mind as well, who's our speaker. So I won't take a lot of your time, but I'll come back at the end. Keep your questions coming in the chat window, and Cliff will be able to answer them at the end. So with that said, let's get started. Over to you, Talat.
Hi everyone, really good to see some of you, and I've just been reading the chat, so really good. And I recognise some people. Hi Chrissy. Thank you. First of all, welcome. I work for Mind, Havering Mind, and also Mind in Tower Hamlets and Newham. My role is to develop the presence of mind within two boroughs. One is Redbridge, and we've been given the go-ahead. We're calling ourselves Mind in Redbridge, and we've been given the go-ahead, and we are present now in Barking and Dagenham. We've got our lovely colleague Cliff over in the top corner, and Cliff has just started his role, and then this happened, and so we're obviously trying to do everything remotely. Just to explain how this happened, Himanshu and myself were on a call together for the Barking and Dagenham Faith Forum a couple of weeks ago. It was very difficult, Himanshu, because we were on a phone call. We couldn't see each other. And I just wanted to explain how absolutely vital it is to feel connected. There was a slight disconnect for me, Himanshu, on that call because, you know, you couldn't put a voice to a name and there was lots of voices. So I just wanted to put that when we start to develop our discussion today about well-being and mental well-being. Humans need to connect, and I wanted to put that out there, you know, and it's lovely to see so many new people. And just when Himanshu said, put one thing on the chat about what's brought you joy, all of us, it was about some connections. Either Rajendra in the garden with growing with your plants, or Belinda, I saw, really lovely to see you put your family. We forget actually the joy that can come from really simple things, and it's all about connections, isn't it? Being able to see people. For me, I think, Himanshu, I put that seeing some of my local neighbours go out for walks, especially the elders, brought me a lot of joy because it was something about feeling safe, but also reclaiming our streets in a very safe way. As you all know, we've entered Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's a really simple theme. It's kindness. I'm a great believer in random acts of kindness, but actually, I just wanted to share a little bit about what the theme is about. Kindness has been chosen because of its ability to unlock our shared humanity. Kindness strengthens relationships, it develops community, and it deepens solidarity. And I know that through the work that I've been doing for Mind, we've realized that people are starting to see each other in their streets. They're starting to see, I see you, I hear you. And I know from Himanshu, the call we were on, there was a lot of hurt, especially within the faith communities. And I think just even hearing that, it's not about having the answers, it's just about acknowledging that. Kindness is a cornerstone of our individual and collective mental health. Wisdom from every culture across history recognizes that kindness is something that all human beings need to experience and practice to be fully alive. And I wanted just to leave that with you to really think about. It's such a small word, but actually those connections, some of the people you're supporting in your communities, maybe that person they spoke to in Iceland or the local Sainsbury's, or even in the cafe in their community faith centre, that was what kept them going. And obviously we're being challenged at the moment. Yeah. So Himanshu has said there's a chat system to ask questions. Cliff's going to go straight into the presentation. Don't worry about taking notes. He's sharing this with Jessica afterwards, and Jessica, you can disseminate that onwards, so you'll have the presentation with the signposting within it.
And also this webinar is being recorded, so it will be put on our website as well.
Lovely. So just a slight little bit of context, the work that I'm doing, which is basically sort of looking at the landscape and the mental health needs within both Redbridge and Barking and Dagenham, I think that I've picked up, and that was sort of born through by the Barking and Dagenham Faith Forum, is that the communities are hurting. There are communities within all the Abrahamic faiths and more and none missing their communal spaces, which may have been housed within our faith centres. So it's nothing to do with spirituality, it's about safety of a space. So I know that within Dagenham, Kingsley Hall, which some of you may know, has a very lovely cafe communal area for all faiths and all sectors. They're trying to deliver services remotely, and they're struggling actually, because certainly within some of the synagogues that I've been working with in Redbridge, the people who can't access the remote services are IT poor. And that's not about access to or ability to buy the material, it's the skills that are needed. And you can imagine with some of these elders who are now isolated from the younger members of their family, real sense of grieving. And I wanted to mention that because there's no sort of bereavement that's taken place. But as you know, grief has many stages and they can go in a cyclical fashion. So I think we're being challenged in terms of the mental health support we can give. And Himanshu just said, you know, is there anything we can put out there? So Cliff has kindly put together a set of sort of materials just to give you an awareness. Some of them you may know, some you may not know, and tips. But again, building on what I shared with, which was the Mental Health Awareness Week, please do not undervalue the value of that kindness, that reaching out and that connection with anyone within your community that you're supporting. And above all, be kind to yourselves as well. So with that, I'm going to move over to Cliff. Cliff, over to you.
Thank you, Talat. Okay. Yeah, so as Talat said, this presentation, if you like it, Jessica, I'll forward it on to Jessica and she'll can pass it to you email-wise. So you haven't got to take any notes. If you ever got any questions, put them in the chat and we'll get to them sooner or later. One of the things I'll say just before I start, it is about understanding. I've put this together with a sort of idea that understand bits and pieces that you might already know. It's use the word common sense a lot these days, but you might already know this, but it's just about if you can understand the person's perspective, can understand the person's way of being even, it can help with what help you decide to give. So let me start. Okay, so yes, so in this Mental Health Awareness Week, as I said, this presentation is to broadly highlight aspects of mental health and what we can do to help others as well as ourselves. I've included some stereotypical myths and facts that people may have heard about or use for explaining mental health issues that people have. The reason I am here is because those with clutter and hoarding tendencies needed a more focused support, which is why I was brought in by Barking and Dagenham Council via Havering Mind. As you'll see, we're trying to set up Mind in Barking and Dagenham, which is this first slide. The point about hoarding is that people say hoarders are lazy, dirty, and that is so far away from who those people are. This is the very point that's going to be covered in the presentation, is that belief and perception that some people have around mental health, but also around clutter and hoarding and collecting issues that I deal with. Let's see if I can go to the next screen. I'll get there in the end, honest. Okay, so one of the things that mental health appears to have at the present moment is this, especially during lockdown, is it's always about negative mental health. It's always about the negative thoughts and feelings, which is understandable because that's what comes up. It's said that these negative emotions and thoughts lead to negative actions and overwhelming feelings that we cannot cope with. Yet we must always be aware that with any negative, there is usually an opposite, and that is positive. And in most cases here, the place where we want our mental health to be. As you can see on the left list, this is what we'd like to be, and that's a positive mental health attitude. Although it is reported more and more people having mental health issues negatively, it's also true that more and more people are seeking help as more and more help becomes available to turn this around to a positive mental health condition. We are learning to talk more freely about our mental health and targeting how we can cope and become resilient to the negativity that we have through thought and feeling and other people's insensitivity and disaction that comes to our lives. Here you can see where our negative mental health stems from and what we can do to access a more positive mindset. So, what is positive mental health? Let's start with the positive side, because that's where our target will be. How do we get to it? What is it? One of the words that keeps coming up when I deal with people is coping. How are people coping with the thoughts they have or the way someone is treating them? And that is what positive mental health brings, a way of coping with life. And those aspects of life that goes on and around and inside of us. Coping and the utilising the emotions we have and our reactions to the world can determine a positive outcome for the individual. Ideally, it's about changing the perception of what we think is happening to our reaction to what is happening. This can be a first step to coping with what is really happening for us. In the World Health Organization here, it defines what good positive mental health is. And I think this is the target for mostly everyone. So how do we get to a positive mental health state that will allow us to cope with everyday things in our lives? It's said that we drink, eat and be merry. Indeed, it is good advice, yet we must moderate that which we eat, what we drink and how we socialise. Eating nutritiously, drinking for hydration rather than euphoria and socialising for connection, comfort and support are required to give us the best chance of achieving a more positive mental health. And for me, being a claustrophobic, just being out in the open air and not enclosed is uplifting. So I can fully understand the addition of exercise in aiming to improve the mental state of everyone. And those are the three basic things. It's physical needs, social connection, and then the activities. And no matter what you do, if your aim is to get to those three, it will improve your mental health. So what is mental health? Negative thinking. It's a pattern of negative thinking about yourself, your surroundings. We all experience it. Everyone who has a mind will have mental health, whether that be positive or negative, because that's where it comes from. It stems from that. The problem is when it's a negative mental health, there is a stigma attached to those problems. People are uncomfortable. They don't want to talk about it at all, if anything. And many people don't feel comfortable about talking about feelings, but it is healthy and it is something we have to promote and educate, that people should know what to say and how they're feeling before it leads to a mental illness. Here we have some examples of what mental illnesses are. And it takes a long time to get to these points because you have to be thinking negatively for a fair while. Some people say it's 2 years. Clinically, it can be months, because I've seen where people have started having negative issues fairly recently, and I would say 2 to 3 months in, they're already looking at anxiety. They're already looking at disorders such as bipolar and wondering whether they're schizophrenic. They start thinking that, and that negativity just keeps going and becomes a negative thought again. They start trying to control things like what food they're going to eat, what they're going to drink, what drugs to take even. And that is where you need to get into that point of what help can we give. So firstly, men are a big problem. They really need to talk about their feelings. With figures like these shown here, it becomes fundamental that men learn or are educated in how to open up themselves with their mental health, and if it's not going well, how to talk about that, to trust that others will listen and to not feel that they are a burden when discussing emotions and feelings. Secondly, we need to teach everyone at any age, doesn't matter whether they're young 5-year-olds, which I think is now the government's, you can have a test at 5 years of age. If they're that young, we need to educate that talking about these types of feelings and emotions, the impact of those on us, and asking for that mental help should be as commonplace as seeing a doctor when you feel physically hurt. It really is, that is the crux of the matter, is the education at a young age. Children experience mental health problems. Most of the mental health issues in later life stem from earlier things, whether that be school, whether that be family, but it's always disorders that start before, as it says here, the age of 24. One of the things that this highlights for me is we all judge. We all judge. From the first sight of a person, we begin to judge who they are, what they may think, whether we like them, and all those judgments, especially if someone with negative mental health, merely adds to the negativity they feel. Open, honest dialogue and understanding can have a numerous positive effects, as shown here on this slide, both for the person, but also for their workplace and their community. This can also be said of other aspects of life, especially around culture and religion and the whole of society, and can lead to greater understanding and harmony amongst us all if we can get this right, if we leave the judgments out and if we can just come together. Now, we're all different and unique, yet there are still a lot of commonalities between us all that are in our history, whether that be personal history, community history. There's commonalities there that have made us feel less than okay. And one of the things that everyone says, and it's true, is it's okay not to be okay. We've got to remember it is okay that we're not okay today, because tomorrow is another day and maybe we'll be all right. Once we begin to address the commonalities though, less judgment and stigma will be placed on the individual with negative mental health and recovery towards a more positive mental health outlook. This can begin, but it needs to be a collaborative action of support, possibly embracing mental, medical and physical help from outside sources collectively to foster a greater understanding of the mental health issues that we're all going through. We can all help those suffering, as really, I believe, and it is a belief, that we all want two things. One, not to suffer. Two, to be happy. Those are, for me, the two crux. We want to be happy all the time and we don't want to suffer anything. Things happen where you will have to suffer loss, and we understand that. But if we can bring those who are suffering to a point in their lives where they feel more positive in themselves, then that energy will filter into us. And we can take that positivity within us, knowing that we've helped, allowing them to cope. Again, coping is the word that I come up with a lot, and what is going on and around them, the add-ons to someone's life and to others that they connect with, as represented here at the bottom paragraph, cannot be undervalued in our community and should not be undervalued in our society. It's that crux of, again, educating and making sure people understand that this is a societal thing. It's not just those or them, it's all of us, because we all have minds. So what can we do? How do we support people? Underlined on this sheet, and as I said, you'll be getting this anyway, are the watchwords to start helping others. And it begins with listening. In my line of work now, that is the big one, because I found that if someone feels heard, they can open up. If they can open up to the possibilities to move from a negative to a positive mental health, to begin to look for the tools that will sustain that feeling, they will be able to cope. And this is giving them the empowerment. To another person, that is probably one of the greatest things you can do, is to empower someone to cope with their lives, to cope with whatever's come up for them. However, we must all be aware that a person's thoughts and actions can impact us. And this is where we need to understand our place and our role in the help we give. The transference of emotion, no matter what modality of counselling you come from, is subtle, but it comes. In keeping in mind the next slide and its effects will be limited and easier to deal with, and the boundaries we create can be preserved. So what can we do to support others and help ourselves? Take a note, if you like, but you'll have this sent through to you. These are the things that you not only should do for yourself, but do for other people. Talk kindly. In this week, we've been discussing that. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. We're talking about kindness. Talk kindly to yourself. Because talking kindly to yourself is something we don't do. Our minds always go to the negative parts of us. We always remember the things that we don't do, the things we regret. We never go and talk kindly about what we did. We've got to get past this thing about okay, I've got to deal with that over there because this is where it's done. It's, yeah, it was done. We were good. Talk kindly to yourself. Each of these steps is something that people with positive and negative mental health can take on board to help others and to help yourself if you ever become overwhelmed with the thoughts and emotions of other people. If you're helping someone, no matter who it is, it will have a knock-on effect. You know, their emotions, their thoughts, they may not go away. Practice these things. Let them know that they'll practice. Let them have this list. And maybe they can then help themselves as well, and it won't be so bad on you. You will not get that effect. So practice gratitude. Gratitude at the moment is one of the big key things that everyone, when you listen to neuroscientists, is be thankful. Practice that. Acts of kindness to others always makes you feel better when you act kindly to someone. But remember to act kindly to yourself as well. Reflect daily. One of the things I tell my clients is to journal. See what it is that you felt during that day. Self-care is massive. We must all self-care. My analogy here is always that of the airplane. If the cabin pressure drops, oxygen mask will fall from the ceiling, and you put yours on first so that you can help other people. If you don't do that, you can't help other people, so you have to self-care. But be responsible. If you've had a busy day, be responsible for yourself. Get to a point where, right, what do I need to make myself feel better? And if that's a treat, that's fine. But recognize it that it may not be the treat that you think, like alcohol or overeating. Do things you enjoy. Invest in your passions, your interests. Practice mindfulness if you can. People do yoga, people do mindfulness, people just meditate. That is all, for me, is the encompassment of mindfulness. And it's just a way of focusing on yourself and how you're feeling. This is my one, spend time in and around nature. I have been indoors like everyone else, been locked down for so many days. I go out twice a week just to breathe in the fresh air, to see the open space, to notice the trees have got more leaves on. I go into my garden, I've taken photographs of even the smallest flower that's come out from the ground. It's just about being and knowing that, yeah, this will grow, it will then wither away, it will then die, it will come back. And that's a cyclical thing about time. But think of opportunities. When you're with someone, this now is an opportunity for all of us to really think about what we want in our lives. You know, it's a case of the lockdown has given more thought. This morning, I think if anyone saw BBC television, they had a guy called Luke Chadwick, ex-Man United player, played also for West Ham for a season. Sorry, I'm a West Ham fan, so do forgive me. Opening up about what went for him as a mental health issue, and how he took that on board and has become an opportunity for him to give back in the work he does now, which is for 5 to 12-year-olds. They're learning to play football, but also learning the actual characteristics of being a footballer, the teamwork, understanding authority, all those little things that we take for granted in some cases, he's putting out there. And this is a man who has now really opened himself up, much the same as a lot of people now are doing on social media, because it's this lockdown has given us that time to take that opportunity. So we've put together, put some contacts that may be useful to you. Obviously, NELFT, mental health is across the North East London. These are all coming through to you anyway. So the information we've put for other organisations, I have got a much bigger list. It's about 6 or 7 pages. I will send that through to Jessica as well. So if anyone wants that, it has got websites, it has got phone numbers, it's got all those sort of contact details, email addresses as well, but that can come through. So I hope you have found some aspects of this presentation helpful. Remember, this is only the beginning of a long week of awareness of mental health, in which we've got to remind ourselves and others that it's okay to not be okay, but also that we are not alone when it comes to mental health issues. We all have a brain, we all have a mind, so we all have a place where our mental health is required. So I do thank you for all that you've done, and yeah, thank you for listening to this presentation.
Lovely. Cliff, thank you so much. Could I just ask you to talk a little bit about the bereavement service line that Have Reminder do?
Yeah, not a problem. We've been funded to do a bereavement and crisis service, which is on our website. If you go to haveremind.org.uk, where people who have suffered bereavement during this period can get help, counselling type help. They can even get practical type help, whether it be, because obviously there are other aspects to organising a funeral, or the money side of things, benefit side of things, anything like that they can get help with. And also, if this lockdown has actually brought up a crisis for you, if it really has become too hard mental health wise, you can come to us and we'll give you as much advice and we'll give you as much support as we can possibly give you. We have got other services waiting on the line, so to speak, that will then pass on and support you in what you need. But it's a very short, it's only for 12 weeks at the moment, basically because that's what they said the COVID-19 shutdown would be a maximum of 12 weeks. So we've got to keep it to that. But we're only in week 5 now, so we've got a long time to go yet. Anyone who wants to, as I said, address a bereavement, a crisis, a trauma even, because this is a very traumatic period of time for people, especially those on their own. They're locked in, basically, and they need to know there's people out there, which is where I keep saying, Have Reminder said, we are not alone. We are there to help. So yeah, just go to that. You can call the number of Have Remind, and that is now being diverted to mobile phones around the borough. So the only downside is it is for Havering residents, but we're sort of like tweaking it. Don't tell them I said this. We're sort of like tweaking it to get other people help as well.
Cliff, thank you so much. I wanted to open up the floor now to anyone who maybe that's raised some issues, but just to recap, Cliff and I spoke earlier this morning, and we're really aware that Himanshu, as chair of the forum, you are at the front line. We talk about the frontline responders. And I know we've got someone who joined who said she's working in King George Hospital. That's at the front line of people potentially at a very traumatic stage of either loved ones or themselves. And that's the time you need to commune and come together, but that can't happen at the moment. And I think, Cliff, really valuable to hear you talk about transference, which is actually when someone shares something with you, it's got to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere. You might be really adept and really skilled at relieving your work issues and going home. But I think Cliff and I were really concerned about what you all carry in the capacity that you're here in the forum. And I think Cliff has very soundly underlined self-care. So I know there's a number of people who've already shared, you know, Rajinda with her garden, and that ability to connect with nature is actually quite therapeutic. But I will say again that actually human beings, we are relational. In wartime, you're put in isolation as a form of punishment. There's a reason for that, because we are made to connect. And therefore, this COVID-19 experience is really challenging because we're asking people to actually disconnect. And I think, Himanshu, when we spoke last time on the phone, I wondered what the new normal would be. Because I've devoted 10 years of my work in professional life to community development and cohesion, which is about those connections. And in the space of a few months, we're now walking away, and it's quite wisely, we must cross the road. So imagine the work that we're doing, what the new normal will be. But acknowledge that, as Cliff is saying, it's okay to not know, and it's okay to not be okay. And those famous words obviously came from Danny Cotton after the Grenfell incident. And I wanted to mention that because she's a female fire chief, and whatever your issues on that whole episode were, the very next day, she went on the media and said, I'm not okay. It's okay to not be okay. And she immediately sought counselling. And what that enabled, and I used the word enabled, was that these really big, burly firemen felt able then to reach out and say, we need to talk, we can't make sense of what's going on for us. So please, all of you, be aware that not only are we supporting communities who may be grieving and lost in different ways, but there's also something about what that does to ourselves as well. I think, Cliff, you said, try not to fix it, try to listen. And I think that's a huge tenement of the work that I've been doing. I've spoken to quite a few faith communities at the moment. Shortly before the lockdown occurred, Cliff and I were at the Liberty Mall doing a community support event. And we were amazed at how many people came along to the stand. Actually, they didn't really want to know about Mind in Havering, did they, Cliff? They were really angry. I just wanted to share this one elderly gentleman. He kind of really had a go at both of us about the BBC license. We tried to explain to him we were nothing to do with the BBC. But actually, Cliff, thanks so much. We sat with it and the anger dissipated. And actually, he was really lonely and no one was listening to him. And he felt the government was doing stuff to him. We also heard from a number of people who just said, we feel a bit forgotten in this free generation. And I've just been, Himanshu, in Barking and Dagenham since September last year, trying to develop this role. And I wanted to put back to you some of the stuff that I've heard from the local community. This is from community groups I went to, cafes, community centres. It's happening to us. We weren't really consulted. And now whether that's true or not, I just listened. They talked to me about something called the Riviera. They talked about a posh part of Barking and Dagenham, which is kind of where a film studio's been. And they said, it's not for us, Talat. It's not for the likes of us. And I think you have to hear what they're trying to say there is that we weren't consulted. And I think, Himanshu, the other thing I wanted to raise was the call that we had from the Faith Forum. There was something about the disproportionate representation of the BAME community within the COVID-19 figures. And I haven't got the answer to that, but one of the things I wanted to say was, in certain cultures, it's actually the first thing you do. Greeting enables a connection. So there's something about rethinking that and being able to share that in a way which these communities can fully understand. And I said at the call, Himanshu, that maybe it needs to come from the faith leaders who are very highly respected within each community. But actually there was also someone from the Muslim faith community who said, actually, you know, we are really socially isolated, and I feel quite aggrieved that it's being pinpointed to my community. And I understand exactly what he's saying. Again, I haven't got the answer, but we have got facts and statistics. So we need to be aware of that. And we need to be more sensitive to how we relay information. And again, I'm going to go back to what Cliff said. If any of you are ill in this meeting room at the moment, I'm pretty sure the first thing you do is maybe mention it to someone you live with, and then normally make that GP appointment. Similarly, if you're feeling not too good and you're feeling quite down, we need to also, at a very young age, encourage people to say, I'm not feeling too good. So just as you'd go to see the GP, it should just be as easy to say, I'm actually feeling really down. It's gone on for more than 7 days. What do you think? And actually, Cliff and I were talking about it this morning. Depression, anyone, Cliff said it, if you're living, you're breathing, you've lived, you would have had some elements of anxiety and feeling down. I'm going to put that as a given. Depression's classified where it lasts longer than, I think it's 2 weeks, but we're talking a period. You'll know what you'll think, I can't pull myself out of this. And it's that ability to bounce back. It's not there. And it affects your everyday life. And I wanted to just clarify that. So we all, I think I've had moments when I've said to my children, I feel quite down, and it's Ramadan, we're fasting. It's not about not eating. Ramadan is really about connecting with all faiths and giving to your neighbours. But again, there's different ways you can do that. So we can send food parcels to our elderly neighbours. We can do that. However, I'll be honest, it's felt very different because the faith centres are closed. And I think I just wanted to acknowledge that. I'm not going to pretend, yeah, it has been very different. But actually, I'm sharing that and I feel better being able to say that. Imagine if I wasn't able to say that and I had to keep being quite positive. It's got to go, and I'll start again. I remember I said, if you hear something, it will go somewhere. And just manage that in a very healthy way. So, Himanshu, I'm going to go back to you.
Well, thanks, Talat, and thanks, Cliff, for this wonderful presentation. You're right. I mean, the people who are on front line are kind of facing, and almost everyone over here, whether it's Lloyd or Billy from the local authority, Kushnood, Sam, everyone, Belinda, are on the front line and kind of are facing. So I have a list of questions here, and I'll repeat Lloyd's question first, which is, what's the best way for us as carers and leader to ensure we stay well? Question for Cliff and Talat.
I was going to say, the best way for anyone, and I said it towards the end there, is about boundaries. It's about knowing where to split that, being a carer, being a leader, and you. And it is a case of ensuring you stick to those. We as counsellors are told to stick to boundaries in council time, but when it comes to, and I think Talet's done something really wonderful here, she restricts herself to, I work these days, the rest of the time is for me and my family. That is a prime example. That is the best way, is to make sure you've got a boundary about work. Make sure you've got a boundary, as you said, if you're a leader and you're on it 24/7, it will wear you down. You've got to have that time for yourself. And I think that's really, if you look at Boris Johnson as a prime example, he was out shaking hands, he was out doing all those meetings. You could see him physically deteriorate with the coronavirus. If he had have just gone, enough, this is my day job and this is where I work, that's my life over there, and he would have kept that boundary, he would not have been in such a bad place, I don't think. But that's the way to do it. It's a case of keeping yourself separated at certain times so that you have a chance to breathe. And I don't mean literally just to go, I can't breathe. It's a case of mind breathing. It's a case of body breathing, allowing your body to rest from the stress, being able to not have your shoulders up here, but down here, relaxing. That's what I said about meditation and mindfulness. Do those things. Be kind to yourself and know, but keep that boundary. Because the minute you start going, I'll just let it go I'll just let it go. That's when the stress comes in. I've been there myself. I've been there years as counselling. It's been a case of I let little things go and it build up and it becomes overwhelming, and suddenly you're going, I can't do this. And it's literally, I can't listen to people. How does that? Listening to people, that's my job. And now I'm going, I can't do it because I let those little boundaries go, and then you have to bring them back in. So for yourself, self-care, create simple boundaries, even if it's like, at 9:10 on a Monday morning, this is what I'm doing. And at 9:10, you stick to that. That's literally what you've got to do. And that routine, that structure can give you someone's foundation of stability. And once you've got that stable foundation, as most religions know, get a stable foundation and things can be created. And that's what you can do. That's how I see how you should be looking after yourselves as carers, as leaders, as people. Doesn't matter what your job is, but especially on the front line, the minute they finish on the front line, basically disassociate from what you've done and become the person that you need to be for you.
Thanks, Cliff. Lloyd, does that answer? Perfect.
I just want to add, Himanshu, Lloyd, one other thing. Redbridge have got the coronavirus wellbeing support helpline, and I'm pretty sure Havering have got it too, Himanshu. So this is the mutual aid group. All offers of befriending, shopping and connections are there. So sometimes we forget that that's kind of 90% of what people reach out is they're feeling quite isolated, Lloyd. So worth linking in some of those lovely volunteers within our faith communities to those groups who've got the vehicles and the transport available to do medicine. So
I believe Barking and Dagenham have a helpline as well. And I don't know if Billy's still around. Maybe he can throw some light on that. But I'll move on with the questions. Siobhan has asked, is it possible to support someone if they aren't asking for help? It seems very insensitive and she wouldn't want to be imposing.
Cliff, I was just going to say, I'm sure Cliff will unmute as well. I was just going to say, this is all about, Siobhan, looking out for those signs. So normally this would be someone who hopefully you would have built a relationship with. And that's the key thing here, Siobhan. You would know their normal behaviour. Very difficult if it's just someone you've done a cold call and you're thinking, normally I imagine you're asking this as you know someone quite well and they're acting slightly differently, and that's brilliant because it means you've noticed those changes. This is where you've really got to build on that relationship and have something called patience and perseverance. You can't fix it, so what you do is you increase just gently how often you check in on them at the moment via phone call or Skype or Zoom, and gently start to ask them, I've noticed you look slightly, you seem to be, and say those words, because actually with mental health, we're so scared of saying those words like, are you depressed? Have you thought of, some of those words that we need to say, have you hurt yourself? You've got a bruise on your face, stuff like that. And I think obviously there's safeguarding issues and where you will have to involve other services. But if it's just I would say stick with it. And often, because these people just say they're only here for the short haul, then just maintain that relationship. And then when they're ready, but you can't force, it's always, there's no compulsion here. But knowing actually that link between you, I would imagine that they would come forward and ask for that help. But yeah, very gently, I would say, depending on.
Siobhan, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I really like that tip of just sharing what you have observed. So I noticed this, or I can see this. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Just something that we forget to do because we're so scared to say, are you down? Are you feeling? No, and I something, you try and jolly things up. Just don't jolly it. Sit with it. Sit with it.
Thank you.
Can I just add there? Sorry to interrupt. Can I just add there? I think what Taylor is right. It's about being direct, using the words. One of the things, when we're dealing with suicide, for instance, ask the question, have you been thinking about suicide? People are not, they're waiting for you to be nice and, oh, you're right, are you okay? They're not ready for that immediate question. And that's when you get the most truthful answers. So yeah, basically be direct, gentle, but direct, if that makes any sense. But it's that use of the word and the words you think, I feel you're depressed, or it comes to me that you're totally down, what's going on? And asking an open question will get them to talk.
Thank you.
Okay, next question is from Sam, and he says, my work involves supporting organizations and residents in Barking who are choosing how to use sport and physical exercise can help change their communities. With that in mind, what support is out there to help these people who are not classed as frontline workers, who are feeling levels of personal stress and delivering a wide range of remote services to keep families well at home or when out getting exercise? This is Sam. Sam, I hope I repeated it correctly.
Sorry, I rambled on.
No, that's a lovely question and a very complex question. I think, Sam, from what I'm hearing, it's about actually, okay, so they're not recognised as a frontline sort of healthcare workers and responders, and yet equally they need some help. Going back to what Siobhan said, it's about letting them know what's available. Haver in Mind has got a number of online resource links, hasn't it, Cliff, which you can link into, which has got information on connecting within the community and the support they can get. I know Mind in Tower Hamlets has got that as well. So it's about, first of all, letting them know that it's there, available, lots of support groups, lots of online resources that they can link into. Actually, sometimes the biggest thing is to give them information about some of these issues. So I think both our websites, Cliff, have information on each aspect of anxiety and depression. It's on there, it's on both websites. And Jess, you've got my email, and at the bottom of my email is an online resource link, which is particularly for Mind in Tower Hamlets and Newham, but it's got all the PDFs for each of the anxiety disorders, but also tells you a little bit about self-care and where you can go to for extra help. So I just wanted to leave that. If someone wants more particular information on all of them, Jessica can share that on with you. I think it's also, again, I would say it's about making those connections with those people, Sam. So hopefully you would know some of these. If it's strangers, then that's slightly more difficult because they're probably not going to click on a link and not go for it and find out about it. It's about maintaining that perseverance, saying, are you okay? I wonder how this week's been for you. This is Mental Health Awareness Week. Did you show a bit of self-care? And they laugh. And you'll ask them, well, tell me a little bit about what you did. It's those conversations that can be so telling on how they really are. Cliff, did you want to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it quite well actually. But I think we'll give you a list obviously of all the contacts that we've got that can then be you can go through or you can pass on. But again, for me, it's about some of it is about self-care, but also to know that there is someone behind them, someone supporting them, someone there is out there. So I think having that promotion, advertising, call it what you like, on either social media or things like this, faith groups, just putting it out there that you can go here, you can go there. This is available to you. It's just that having it there, even if they don't use it, even if they're not going to go and look at it, but to know that it's sort of there is a help. If anything does happen, I've got that, and it goes across the board for most things. But yeah, I think especially for me, the self-care bit is definitely something that we need to push on to people.
If Lloyd has just asked if in Barking they can utilise the services of Mind in Havering and elsewhere. Lloyd, to clarify, Havering Mind is sub-operating as an operating name of Mind in Barking and Dagenham. So yes, that's the same website. And we were just in the process of having a big launch and introducing him to all of you, and we were going to visit all of you. And obviously this has happened. We are potentially going to do that after these restrictions are lifted. But
I was also going to ask the same question. So to follow up, so what are the services of Mind in Barking and Dagenham that we can expect in near future?
So at the moment, Cliff is going to be your main contact. He's the man. He's going to have an office base in Barking and Dagenham. He has. You saw the logo at the front, so we were going to get banners done for that. Part of this is working in partnership. Any new project we have will only sustain itself if we work in collaboration and partnership, and that's obviously the next stage of the work we were going to do. I was going to come along with Cliff, and we were going to sort of bridge that gap. Barking and Dagenham Council have been the funders of this work, so with they're here, they're supporting our presence. Really, Himanshu, it would be lovely for you guys to say, this is what we need. Cliff is going to work with people who are suffering from hoarding, and this is a huge mental health and illness. Did you all know that it's actually on the increase in Barking and Dagenham? And I think there's a lot of things around that Cliff will obviously be working with, but it's something also about cultural norms, Cliff. There's something about people not wanting to throw anything away because they came from a time of scarcity. But also some of the people who are now looking to purchase homes have shared with me they could not walk around some of the homes in Barking and Dagenham because of the level of clutter. And the other thing to be aware of is after Grenfell and the cladding issue, many people in council accommodation have been issued service warnings about the blockage of communal areas and balconies. So there's something that the area really needs to be aware of. You know, I wouldn't say it's predominantly an elders issue. I think Cliff, it's amongst all age groups actually, but maybe slightly towards the elders as well.
Yeah, it can be across all age groups. It tends to be older people because they have much more stuff that they've picked up through the years. One of the things that through my work in hoarding UK was we found that loss is the biggest thing. The biggest issue that comes up in any of our discussions is someone has lost something. Now, whether that be a person, an animal, a piece of paper, and they start collecting because of that loss. That loss is the trigger, really. So obviously, older people may have lost more than younger people, but there are young people out there that hoard. There is this thing about keeping things for, I can use it on a rainy day. They keep doing that. Some are more aesthetically crafty people who go and actually take your rubbish because they don't want it looking like really awful outside in the street. The people that I work with have done that, but it has always been about a loss, something they've lost in their life, and that's why they hoard. But going back to the original part about Barking and Dagenham, I was literally 1 week in to having meetings with the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham when this came. So I had 4 days of meetings and then 1 day get my stuff out of the office because we're shutting down tomorrow. So I never really got, but the question always will be, what is it you need? It won't be like, oh, I'm coming to give you this. It's like, actually, what is it your residents need?
And actually, Himanshu, could I just thank you, Cliff? Could I just put it out there? Jessica has got Cliff's email, so she will share that with everyone. And if there's any steering group, I know Sam's put something across, but if there's any groups that you think, you know, it would be really good to have maybe Cliff and Tala or Cliff let Jessica come direct to us and we can take it from there. Does that sound good, Cliff?
So
Absolutely.
we will be uploading this on our website, so your contact details will be there. I know I'm conscious of time. We are 2 minutes over. There is one question left from Tukumbo. So if I can repeat that, if everyone's okay, I'll repeat that and maybe you could give us a quick answer to that. So the question is, since many community leaders might be worried about those they cannot contact now, how do we support them in presenting counseling or drop-in sessions after the lockdown?
I'm going to say we don't know what's going to happen after this lockdown stops. I would, if it was trying to use common sense here, it will be a case of, for me, it will be a case of trying to get them to come to a place and help. So I would go to someone's house normally, and I would sit in their house. That may be something they're not going to be happy with after this lockdown. So finding a neutral place. Now, again, I've done counselling in cafes, parks, actually leisure centres. I've actually met, and would you believe, Elton John's Rocket offices in West London, because that's where they wanted to go, because that's where they felt comfortable. Why his office, I don't know, but there you go. But that's, I think, giving the person the choice and going, well, I can give you this help if you want to. Where do you want the help? Again, it is about asking them. Also, though, there is the boundary bit that I will go on about, is making sure that you keep to a boundary. Even if you're outside of the home, even if you're outside of the counselling room, you keep to that boundary. That, you know, that either 2 meters distancing or it's an hour-long session. That's it, and then you walk away from that. And it sounds almost harsh, but it's the only way to keep yourself, you know, calm and in focus on what you need to do.
Thank you, Cliff. And Tukumbo, I just wanted to add to that. What I would say to all of you today is that as we come out of this, and we've been really positive here and hopeful, where some people are talking June, some people are actually saying October, September. So there's, you know, whatever to say. When I've said June to a few of my colleagues, they've panicked because they've got underlying conditions, and clearly it's just interesting what it triggers for many people. I was in a Zoom meeting this morning and a colleague got really worried. She said, "Why did you say that?" And he said, "Words are really heavy, really powerful. We were just talking generally." I think what's really important to Tukumbo is that we find out how people have been. And this is face to face within the social. So I think the first thing Lloyd and other people in this room who are supporting many people in their communities is to enable a safety of a space where we have something which is like a community conversation, where they just sit and say, "Actually, Lloyd, I really missed having tea and that latte at this cafe and arguing with this group member over the cards that we played, because the routine has completely changed." So actually for my really for my satisfaction, what I would like if I was leading a group was to actually say, "Everyone, we're going to get together before we do anything about picking up on all the groups we were doing. Let's do a check-in." And I think that's when you'll start to realize some of the stuff that Sam was saying about what they've been carrying, what's on top. All of the mental health theme every single year, it's about pausing, isn't it? It's about kindness. I think it was time for talk, tea and talk one year, but it was making time just to sit still. And actually, Cliff's right, we've been forced to sit still at home. And I think we've got to realize that home is not safe for many people. It can be safe for some people. Some are not blessed with gardens and spaces. I've seen colleagues working in really cramped conditions. We've gone into people's homes with this Zoom thing, which is quite intrusive. So I think what the first thing really would be to answer that question is to get people together to come in a safe way and say, how has the last 3 months been? And really sit and hear them. And it's not about having the answers, but imagine what it's like for someone to finally say, "Actually, can I say that she might say she's really upset that this granddaughter didn't make an effort," which I'm hearing. People are saying, "Can you believe they're not even bothering? This is when I really need them. I managed before because I had my groups." So I'm just going to say there's a lot of hurt out there. And if we just listen to it, actually you allow it to slightly dissipate a little bit, because you've affirmed someone and you've let them have that space. And I'm not talking about lonely people. Some people are living in very busy households and they are suffering.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. And Tukumbo, I hope that answered your question. But thanks, Talat, and thanks, Cliff, for so wonderfully presenting this very important topic and patiently answering all of our questions. Once again, thank you both from all of us at Barking and Dagenham Faith Forum.
Thank you, Himanshu.
And it will be very interesting to have more conversations with you, as you mentioned earlier. So we're looking forward to that. Before we close, and I know we are about 7 minutes over our time, but before we close, I just wanted to remind everyone that Jess will be sending all the information that has been mentioned on this call to everyone who attended or registered for this event. Our next event will be Inspiring Hope in these troubled times. It will be on 9th of June, so please look out for information on that as we send it out. And thank you all for your time this afternoon, and we hope to see you soon.
Fantastic,
Bye.
lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.